tell the story of how it was the Soviet soldier that saved the world. And it's our duty today to fight against the glorification of Nazism and any manifestation of neo-Nazism. The eclectic Western minority trying not only to diminish but even to smear the role of the Red Army in the defeat of Nazism in every possible way. They are now trying to, it was their idea, to equate the Soviet Union with the Third Reich. The descendants of nationalists and collaborators who have lost in 1945 are now trying to take revenge upon the victors. They have unleashed a shameful war on monuments, trying to erase the evidence of history from popular memory, and also to erase the gratitude of peoples to Soviet soldiers for liberation. Not an empty gratitude, not a protocol one, but true gratitude for being saved. No resolution of the European Parliament or some observatories of the Council of Europe on history will not rewrite the truth of the past. This will not work. The global majority is on our side. The last year's celebration of the 80th anniversary of the Great Victory in Moscow, identified by dozens of leaders from all around the world, is a telling proof of that. I would like to underline one specifically, that we are not trying to privatize our victory, and we will not allow to do this. We will not allow anyone to do this, especially if they're trying to erase the memory of this event. Sometimes in the West they're trying to accuse us of doing this, because I understand why they're doing that, because we are the steward of the historical memory and the truth, and they have already forgotten about the feats of their ancestors. They have forgotten that completely. They've forgotten all the heroes that have brought glory to their countries. But now they are erecting monuments dedicated to collaborators and are giving public space to Nazis. Sometimes I get the impression that it is only our country that is the culture, the people, that is trying to break with this tendency to part with historical memory. And it's not my expression. This historical amnesia, for us, it seems that it is a life's work. That's the impression I get. We see who joins us, our compatriots, public workers in different parts of the world. Political actors are joining us, concerned citizens are joining us, and everyone that still care about the words of victory, the words of the contribution and the sacrifice during the Second World War, the Great Patriotic War. For all those that those words are not empty and are filled, on the contrary, with very important sense, because this was a war that demonstrated the true brotherhood in arms, which endured after the end of the war and after the cessation of hostilities. It went on to become something bigger, laying the foundation of the UN. We are not trying to exploit the memory of the war. It's an integral part of history of each of our families. Therefore, any distortion of the past is unacceptable. But those who are ready to sincerely share the joy of the main holiday of our country will be welcome guests and friends in our country. So you can do this in different ways. You can do this by coming to our country, to the capital, to other cities. You can do this together with our diplomats who are working tirelessly abroad, conducting the events that I mentioned. You can do this by being part of the Immortal Regiment campaign. You can organize exhibitions. You can tell your family's story. and this will be already a very huge contribution to our common cause. On our website, we have a special section dedicated to the Day of the Great Victory, containing all information regarding the work of the Russian diplomatic missions connected with the preservation of the historical memory and linked with the celebrating of the 81st anniversary of the victory. On May 9th, there will be receptions held in foreign missions with the participation of compatriots, friends of our country, and all those who remember the heroic feats of the Soviet people. In some countries, the events have already taken place and are still taking place during those days. This depends on some peculiarities of the country of state, their own traditions, their calendar, the capabilities of our diplomatic missions, and the consideration of the capabilities of our compatriots. So keep an eye on our accounts and social media, where we'll be telling you where and how these events are held. And join them. You're welcome to join. Campaigns dedicated to the anniversary have already taken place in the framework of the Victory Garden and Victory Windows campaigns and the Flame of Memory, which is already going on in some countries. Russian diplomats carry out wreath layings at monuments, mass graves, and burial sites of liberators, and this is happening not only on the eve of May 9th, to only bring flowers on the eve of 9th May, or conducting commemorative events. Those memorials should be taken care of throughout the year, which is exactly what our diplomatic missions are doing. In several countries, we already see the start of the Immortal Regiment campaign. Hundreds of people have already marched through the streets of foreign capitals and major cities, for example, in Washington, New York, Geneva, Chisinau, Tokyo, Kuwait City, and other cities. And those campaigns are happening and will continue happening. On our digital accounts and on social media accounts and our website, we continue to uphold the truth about the Great Patriotic War. We continue to tell the stories of the heroic deeds of the Red Army soldiers entitled Faces of Victory, and speak about the colossal role played by the Soviet Union and all the peoples living there when it comes to the liberation of Europe and the salvation of the entire world from the plague of fascism. I would like to once again to underline that this is an important educational work that's been conducted year-round, including in foreign languages. We also do not forget about the crimes of the Nazis, which have no statute of limitations, especially in the context of the recent Day of Remembrance for the victims of genocide of Soviet people held on April 19th. Subscribe to our social media. There you can familiarize yourself in depth with historical materials and follow how we value the Victory Day. You can subscribe to our embassy's social media accounts. You can see the deep fundamental historical information published, and also you can real life watch the celebration of Victory Day all around the world. Happy holiday. We will of course see each other again and congratulate each other again. Of course, the central event of our preparation for the celebration of Victory Day will be the events with the participation of Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. We are expecting the representative of the media tomorrow on the 8th of May, where, as usual, near our building, there will be a solemn laying of wreaths to the memorials in our building that is a center of attraction for our colleagues and friends from other countries. The first thing that they walking into our building, the first thing that they are seeing, everything that they see are flowers laid at the memorial plaques, where you see depicted the names and the symbols linked with a great victory. Names of our diplomats that I already mentioned today that have come to the front line, gone to the front line, and they have not returned. And once again, I would like to remind everyone that this is the first thing that everyone entering the building of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the Smolensk Square sees. On the 8th of May, the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Russian Federation, Zakharova, will take part in the solemn wreath-laying ceremony at the memorial plaques in the Ministry foyer dedicated to the celebration of the 81st anniversary of the Great Patriotic War 1941-1945. Flowers will be laid at each of the 4 memorial plaques dedicated to the fallen soldiers among the employees of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Foreign Trade during the Great Patriotic War, the victims of the repressions of the 1930s and 1940s, and diplomatic service workers who died in line of duty. This information will be shared through our social media. It will be available live in our social media, in our accounts. Now on to the schedule of minister schedules. I already mentioned one. And in particular, if we talk about the schedule, we've already announced this in the last briefing, but once again, I would like to underline that the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry will take part. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, Zakharova, will take part in the meeting of foreign ministers of BRICS countries, will be held in New Delhi in May 14th-15th. The upcoming meeting under the Indian chairmanship will be a good opportunity for substantive and in-depth discussion of current issues on the international agenda and prospects for improving the global governance system, with emphasis on increasing the role of the world majority states. Special attention will be paid to the further steps towards developing the strategic partnership in the context of preparation for the 18th BRICS Summit, which will take place in New Delhi in September this year. As part of Mr. Lavrov's stay in New Delhi, he will participate in the aforementioned format. Mr. Lavrov will be conducting a full-scale bilateral visit, including negotiations with and to discuss the entire spectrum of bilateral relations, including the schedule of upcoming contracts at the highest high and working levels. Before coming on to the international agenda, on the eve of the celebration of Great Patriotic War, we received news from our colleagues from History, Memory, and Translation colleagues.
We will share links to this section where you can read more information about the results of their work, about creating audio guide in the memorials on the sites of former Nazi concentration camps. During the existence of the camp Flotzenburg in Germany since May 1938 through April 1945, more than 30,000 people were killed, including 26,440 Soviet people in total. The camp saw about 100,000 prisoners. Up to now, not all exhibitions were available in Russian in the memorial complex. The project had 112 participants, including 99 of them were teachers, school children, students, university tutors from the Amursk region, Yekaterinburg, Lugansk, Moscow, Nizhny Tagil, Omsk region, Penza, Rostov-on-Don, St. Petersburg, Tambov, Tyumen, Yaroslavl, as well as students in the school at the Russian embassy in Germany from Berlin and Rostock. They created the first audio guide about the history of the concentration camp in Russian. They also created the German version of the audio guide. The audio guide, given an overall view, was created by the Russian historians Ksenia Chepikova and Yegor Kudrin. It includes Nazi genocidal plans about the USSR, the role of the resistance movement, the story of General Karbyshev in captivity, memories of the Soviet prisoners in Russia were voiced by Sergei Bezrukov, and the great-grandchild of Melton Kontaria, the participant of the special military operation created on the Red Square in 2026, wrote the introductory words. If you have interesting initiatives about this or something else, send them to us. We will support you. Let's move to the relevant agenda. Let us start with the situation around Ukraine. It, without any doubt, is connected directly to May 9th, the Victory Day. Why? Because something that is done in Ukraine for many years is easy to describe. Although those words are terrible, they are used as a tool to cancel, as the West said, of our country, of our culture, of our history, because we are the true guardians of those historic memory that directly associated with the World War II. We do not let anyone to change the history. We preserve the memory. We fight those trends. That's why we were called out like that. And unfortunately, the tools for that were Ukraine and its peoples. This is the very same people whose ancestors withstood during the Great Patriotic War and World War II. This is the very people who were cynically tricked by various political figures mired in corruption. According to the Defense Ministry of Russia on May 4th, the decision of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, declared a truce on May 8th through 9th, 2026, because of the celebrations of the victory of the Soviet people in the Great Patriotic War. This initiative was actively supported by the US President Donald Trump during his telephone call with Vladimir Putin. This made the presidential office of Ukraine nervous. Zelensky awkwardly attempted to decrease its importance, and he started to hint at possible drone strikes against the parade on the Red Square. He was literally shaking from any mentioning of events in Moscow dedicated to the victory over fascism. Clearly, this is the influence of Russophobe atmosphere of the so-called European Political Community Summit that was held on May 4th in Yerevan. He was participated in it on the invitation of the Armenian side. From that podium, he voiced essentially terrorist and Nazi threats. Zelensky made it clear that he is absolutely unbothered by the memory of millions of people who did not spare themselves in order to rescue humanity from the brown plague. He made it clear he doesn't care about the history of his own family, his own grandfather. But he made it clear quite some time ago. But there are still those who do not want to understand that. Those people he doesn't care about because he doesn't care about the history of his people. Were Russian, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Jews, Armenians, Azerbaijans, Georgians, Kazakhs, Moldovans, and many other representatives of peoples of the former USSR. This immortal regiment also includes the grandfather, the fighter of Zelensky. But Zelensky and his clique tries to prevent the memory about these people. 7 years ago, following his victory at the presidential election, Zelensky, in front of cameras, laid wreath to the burial site of his grandfather on May 9th, 2019, the Victory Day, and he told that the Victory Day was a sacred holiday. Those who follow the situation understand what the Westerners want in the global minorities. We're not surprised by this, by the fact that none of the guests from this above-mentioned summit did not call Zelensky to order, was not outraged by the sacrilege of Zelensky when he showed hatred and disrespect to the victory over Nazism. Now, those so-called civilized people sanctioned this with silence. It reminds us of a story about a bad boy famous in Russia. The Westerners provide everything to Zelensky only in order to help Zelensky to erase the history, rewrite the history. They heard what he said, but they did not simply kept silence. They were even happy about it because Zelensky, in their opinion, did everything right. Those participants whose ancestors fought against fascism suffered the crimes in the occupied states of Europe also were silent. But Zelensky, after that, hurried to declare about the start of the so-called truce in the night of May 5th to May 6th. He tried to prevent the promotion in the media of the regime of the ceasefire declared by Vladimir Putin because of the Victory Day. But the Kiev regime needs very much a respite to regroup and prepare to continuation of hostilities. We harbored no illusions about the ability to negotiate by Kiev, but the words and deeds of Zelensky again were different. He did not give any order to cease fire. All this was just a PR movement. We saw many times how the presidential office of Ukraine violates truces that they declared. I would like to give you some examples. So this is backed up by facts. On May 6th, in the first minutes of the new day, the massive strikes were launched against Jankoy in Crimea. 5 civilians were affected. In the Black Sea, at the night of May 6th, 53 Ukrainian drones were taken down by Russian air defense systems. Zelensky many times violated ceasefire regimes, those proposed by Russia. Those that he rejected. For example, the Easter truce this year, it was in place 32 hours from 4 p.m. of April 11th through 12 p.m. April 12th. It was violated 6,558 times. This is 20% more than during the similar truce in 2025. In 2025, it violated the Easter truce for 1,900 times. The Victory Day truce in 2025, it was violated by the Kiev regime 14,043 times. In total, in 2025, the Kiev regime violated ceasefire regimes about 5,000 times. In 2026, at least 6,500 times. Russian armed forces will continue preventing any armed provocations by the Kiev regime. We recommend to take note of the statement of the Defense Ministry of Russia of May 4th about the truce dedicated to the Victory Day and the consequences for Kiev if it is violated. It communicates that foreign diplomatic missions and international organizations accredited in Russia they were informed about those steps that will be taken in case Zelensky moves forward with his threats. The link to this announcement and diplomatic notes that were sent to foreign states, international organizations will be available in text of today's briefing. We call on Ukrainian people and foreign diplomatic corps to take it with all seriousness and to leave Kiev that can be subject to massive missile attack if the Kiev regime attempts to undermine the celebrations of the Victory Day in Moscow. The Kiev neo-Nazi regime continues to take their hatred to civilians and civilian infrastructure of Russia. They expand the geography of their attacks. In the last week, the strikes and shellings by drones affected about 200 people. 166 out of them were wounded, including 8 children. 8 minors were wounded. 34 people were killed, including 2 children. Let's look at the geography of the Kiev's crimes. Belgorod region, on April 29th through May 4th, drones attacked regions and affected 40 people, including a 10-year-old children. Unfortunately, there are people killed. On April 29th, FPV drones with explosives attacked a passenger bus in the village of Voznesanovka. 3 women were killed at the spot. On April 30th, drone attacked a motorcycle, killing 2 teenagers of 15 and 18 years. On May 3rd, in the village of Nichaevka, drone attacked a civil vehicle with a family inside. The man and his 21-year-old son were killed. On May 5th, the Belgorod was subject to drone attacks. 5 people were affected, including 11-year-old child. 1 woman were killed in the city of Shebekino because of the drone attack. The Bryansk region, on April 30th through May 4th, drone attacks killed 2 people. 5 were wounded, including 17-year-old boy. DPR, on April 28th through May 4th, because of drone attacks and shellings, 3 people were killed, 15 were wounded. A school was damaged in Donetsk, the Zaporozhye region. Targeted attacks killed 2 people, including a 16-year-old teenager. 4 people were wounded, including 2 girls of 14 years old. Drones attacked various settlements and 2 people were 2 women were wounded. A Kursk region on April 29th, drone attacked a vehicle in the Rilsk region. A 59-year-old man was killed. Ukrainian armed forces wounded 7 people. LPR on April 28th, drones targetedly attacked the administration of the Markovsky municipal district, wounding 18 people. The Moscow region on May 2nd, fragments of 6 drones that were taken down. A 77-year-old man was killed in the village of Chernivo of Voloklamsk district, Smolensk region. A Ukrainian drone hit multi-story building in the city of Dorogobush and wounded 2 adults and 1 children. The Chuvashian Republic on May 5th, combined attack of the AFU used 2 missiles and 15 drones to attack the city of Cheboksary, killing 2 people. At least 32, including 1 children, were wounded. The Kherson region, and Ukrainian attacks killed 3 people, 18 people were wounded, including 2 elderly women and 1 minor girl. They will be punished for this. Russian law enforcement bodies continue to collect proof to bring to justice Ukrainian militants and foreign mercenaries for the crimes they committed. 22 years in prison are given to Ukrainian Nazi Alexander Belayev. He killed a civilian in Mariupol with a TWIG in April 2022. 17 years in prison. His absentia were given to senior lieutenant of the AFU Dmitry Bulinayev. In September 2023, he many times gave criminal orders to shell the village of Stary Sely, the Belgorod region, from mortars. Following those terror attacks, 7 civilians were wounded. He is wanted internationally. 13 years in prison to each one. In their absentia were given to mercenaries from the U.S. and Ireland, Michael Kidd Garcia, Brigale, and Dries Byrne. They are wanted internationally. According to the Investigative Committee on Russia, the liberated areas in the DPRs, the remains of 74 civilians were found. By now, 9,728 criminal cases against Banderovites were launched. 1,129 investigations was completed. 79 people were given life sentences. Now let's see how these crimes committed by Zelensky against our people and our country. Now see what they've done to their own country.
In the light of installation of martial law until August 2 this year, the Kiev regime intends to tighten the already excessively violent mobilization in the near future, according to the Verkhovna Rada Deputy Alexander Fedorenko. The Minister of Defense has undertaken to cancel the deferments of about 250,000 internal students over the age of 25 under the pretext of them using higher education institutions to evade the draft. Remember the favorite toy of Zelensky? His mother was talking about to the interviews, to social media. Do you remember? I will remind you. Zelensky, as a boy, loved playing meat grinder. He took a real meat grinder and played with it. Not because he had a hard childhood and there were no other toys. No, he went to the kindergarten where there were toys. He went home when there were toys. He had parents, grandparents. But still, his favorite toy was the meat grinder. Of course, the doctors should take a look at that, but the entirety of the world should understand that Zelensky has proverbially using his favorite toy to crush his compatriots, sending him into the bloodbath. The Bankovaya doesn't cease in attempts to introduce the Contract 1824 program, which presupposes the allegedly voluntary dispatch to the front line for a period of 1 year. But this is a one-way ticket, as the song goes. That's the type of contract in Zelensky style. According to media reports, deferments for the categories of Ukrainians have begun to be cancelled en masse in the Ukrainian app called Reserve Plus. The head of the Anti-Corruption Council under the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Yuri Gudimenko, announced raids. You know where they will be happening? There will be raids in gyms to have a sort of a witch hunt against, quote, physically fit men with exemption from mobilization. They're not even trying to conceal it anymore. The Kyiv regime, they're saying it openly. They're conducting the genocide of their own Ukrainian people. Ukrainian media actively has circulations about the plans to create a women's only drone brigade as a PR stunt to promote the expansion of mobilization among women. A rhetorical question, what are all these measures for? Not even a rhetorical question, a practical one, because we have an answer for that. The citizens of Ukraine know the answer to that question. This all leads to the destruction as Zelensky wants it, and the Kyiv regime wants it, and the entirety of Bankova want it, the destruction of their own citizens. But they are being helped by the Western sponsors in that affair. We paid attention to the revelations in some media sources of several representatives of the French military-industrial complex who admitted that they found themselves in a very difficult situation in the context of Ukraine. In fact, on the one hand, their own authorities, namely the Elysee and the others, are pushing them to sign contracts with Ukrainian enterprises to set up joint production facilities, joint ventures in the territory of Ukraine or in neighboring countries in order to connect to the financial flows coming from the EU. On the other hand, the French who showed such interest received a very specific experience of interaction with Ukrainian partners, resulting in their enthusiasm being to noticeably decline after even the first contacts with potential clients, namely the representatives of Ukraine. For example, the Le Figaro provided the testimony of a company heads who were completely dismayed by the fact that Ukrainians were arriving in luxury cars to the meetings and were trying to feed the French nonsense about the operating factories in Ukraine, trying to request project documentation without signing contractual obligations, and at the same time not wishing to conclude deals on the creation of joint production facilities outside of Ukraine, even in neighboring countries. Perhaps for somebody this would be shocking, but for somebody who is not monitoring the situation, who doesn't know about the completely nonsensical amounts of corruption in Ukraine, which has been going on for decades. However, right now it's a completely total and omnipresent, not only in the Bankovaya corridors, but even through special orders from Bankovaya, permeates all levels of government. And it's just curious to see that those who request aid are driving luxury cars. That's the way they are using this aid. They are stealing it, appropriating it. They are appropriating the funds of the European Union citizens. Checking the statements of contractors through firms specializing in economic intelligence, as the French report, reveals the unreliable character of Ukrainians. Sometimes Ukrainian partners become defendants in criminal cases on suspicion of corruption. In the conditions of the appearance of thousands of war economy companies in Ukraine, French manufacturers prefer to limit risk and contact Deputy Minister of Defense Sergei Boyev or other high-ranking officials in Ukraine directly to verify the business reputation of contractors and to receive guarantees. What guarantees the French manufacturers could get from a high-ranking Ukrainian official? Didn't they hear about the Mindich affair involving, I don't know, like all the high-ranking officials of Bankovaya? What guarantees could they give? The only guarantee the Bankovaya can give is that they will be sure to steal all the investment that they receive from the European Union countries, from any country, to be exact. They will steal and embezzle everything. According to French estimates, Ukrainians are capable of flooding the European market with cheap weapons, creating considerable competition for Europeans, including in the export sector. According to one businessman, and these words have been cited in French media, quote, "Today we will help the Ukrainians and tomorrow they will become our competitors." I would say this is sort of a romantical outlook of French businesses towards the Ukrainian counteragents. They will only steal the money. They will not become competitors. They will only embezzle everything and throw away the money, and then they will continue to spread their weapons that they are doing, or they are doing already, resending them to different corners of the world where they could send it for to a higher bidder, etc. French defense contractors say that don't hide the growing concerns that providing Ukrainians with assistance will serve only to boost the Ukrainian defense industry even more. According to Jean-Marc Duquesne, head of the Association of Land, Air Defense and Security Enterprises, out of the 60 billion euros generated from the revenues of blocked Russian assets in the European Union, 6 billion euros were intended for Ukrainian drone manufacturers, which mechanically creates new competitors to the French industry. But who is listening to the French businesses and the LSA? They are only listening to Zelensky, going out to meet him in Yerevan, for example. And on April 22nd this year, a draft law was registered in the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, proposing another nonsensical code, proposing amendments to the criminal code of Ukraine to introduce criminal liability for Ukrainophobia, a criminal penalty in the form of a fine and up to 8 years of prison. So Ukrainophobia will be banned in Ukraine, and any other type of phobia will be allowed. But there's no time to think for them in Ukraine. They are stealing, embezzling, and propagandizing themselves. So they're very busy. The initiator of this legislative initiative is the professional Russophobe and fighter against everything Russia, a three-term deputy, Lvov resident Nikolai Knyazhitsky. According to his design, Ukrainophobia will be understood as humiliation of national honor and dignity, and public denial of Ukrainian nation's right to self-determination, sovereignty, and statehood, justification of the stimulation of the Ukrainian people, and denial of the legitimacy in the struggle for independence, and public disrespect for Ukrainian ethno-cultural characteristics, including in literary and artistic works. Oh my God. So if this law is adopted, the first one to be prosecuted should be Zelensky himself, whose actions resulted in destruction of so much Ukrainian, everything that is Ukrainian, that it defies belief. Knyazhitsky is probably sorry that the Kiev native and the great Russian Soviet writer Mikhail Bulgakov is already dead. Otherwise, he would have prosecuted him to the full extent of the law for the full 8 years for his anti-Ukrainian lines he wrote in this novel called The White Guards, which accurately and surgically describes such figures as Knyazhitsky and his ilk. I think such descriptions are frequent in Bulgakov's work. All those who are hiding behind beautiful words about some state interests and faint concern for the people, who in fact do not value the people at all. This initiative is nothing more than a cover for tightening repressions, arbitrary approach, and destruction of any hints of dissent on the part of the Russian-speaking people so hated by Benderites, whose rights have been long tempered by and trampled upon by the Kiev regime, including the right to life. However, the champions of Ukrainian identity are ready to take revenge on any suspicious, in their opinion, non-believer. If they have a weapon, a baton, if they have an opportunity to use force, they will use it. For example, Deputy Commander of the Kraken Unmanned Aerial System Regiment, Konstantin Nemechev, publicly called for tougher measures against residents of the country with pro-Russian views who continue to read Russian channels and write comments in social networks. In other words, this obscurantist yearns to get even with the majority of residents of Ukraine by labeling them as traitors for using the Russian language and other, as he says, sins of descent. The above-mentioned facts confirm the relevance of the task of denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine and the elimination of all threats emanating from its territory. All those goals will certainly be achieved, as what repeatedly claimed by the Russian leadership. And also on the 14th of May, the Police Academy of the Russian MFA will conduct a roundtable about the spread of crime and illicit drugs from the territory of Ukraine. That event will be attended by the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Dmitry Lubinsky, and ambassadors of the global majority countries who are Russia's partners on anti-crime and anti-drug platforms. As part of the discussion, attention will be paid to the specifics of a criminogenic situation in the territory of Ukraine in the context of the special military operation. Special emphasis will be placed on the emerging threats from the criminal community of the Kiev regime. The focus will be paid to the large-scale destructive activities of the fraudulent call centers, human trafficking, including children, and human organs trafficking, illicit arms trafficking, and so on. There are plans to thoroughly cover the issue of the nexus between the actions of the Kiev regime and local criminals aimed at enriching the leadership of the Bankovaya Street, as well as questions regarding the cooperation between Ukrainian organized crime groups and their partners in Western intelligence agencies and international terrorist organizations in third countries. The current situation in the sphere of illicit drug trafficking in Ukraine will be addressed separately, with emphasis on the fact that long before the start of the special military operation, the country has turned into a major transit point for the smuggling of again opiates and a center for the production of synthetic drugs. We expect that this roundtable will make it possible to conduct a professional and constructive exchange of views with representatives of global majorities countries on issues that are pressing and important to all of us. And some more words about the day-to-day life of the sponsors of the Kiev regime, what has been done. The situation in Austria, and namely the decision to declare free employees of the Russian foreign missions in Vienna as persona non grata. We consider these steps as completely baseless, overtly unfriendly, and politically motivated. The ruling circles of the pseudo-neutral Austria continue to blindly follow the anti-Russian course of the collective West and are taking reckless actions to dismantle the positive legacy accumulated over many decades in our bilateral relations to the detriment of their own national interests. The Russian side will take significant and, believe me, painful retaliatory measures against official Vienna. And now on Germany, recently we saw the presentation of the common concept of general concept of military defense of the country, presented by Boris Pistorius, the German Minister of Defense. We have familiarized ourselves with what was available in the public space regarding this decision. When reading this, we have doubts that the authors of this document and the minister himself are in sound mind and sound conscience. We, of course, have been growing accustomed to those questions of medicine linked to the actions of Western politicians. We have, but this case is special because we have grown accustomed to baseless claims and absurd actions of Berlin, but now we see that they have come back to the nonsense that we have seen before. In the last 300 years, they have learned anything. The ruling elite is changing, Kaisers or Führers or chancellors and presidents, but the main threat is still Russia, but namely not to the citizens, but to the ones that who is in power. The priority task is inflicting a strategic defeat upon a country, as they have already mentioned numerous occasions, and they also say how to prepare for it properly. Whatever you call it, concept or Operation Barbarossa, we don't see any creativity in the trends and narratives and patterns. They also have this word. This is all similar. The arguments are old. It turns out that we are once again, you wouldn't believe it, we are once again seriously threatening them because there is an inevitable attack on our side. Well, perhaps we should think what is happening there and what is happening to those who are writing such nonsensical things. Let's remind them that for 30 years, our country called on the official Berlin and different representatives of the German political establishment and German business circles, all those NGOs and NCOs and whatever. What did we call them for? To rupture our relations or to create a competition in inflicting strategic defeats? Perhaps we were trying to exercise in threats? No. We propose to jointly build a unified security architecture from the Atlantic to the Urals, or from Lisbon to Vladivostok. Any form of interaction, cooperation, perhaps with the possibility of a real friendship. We wanted to build joint economic, humanitarian, and cultural spaces. We did everything. And what's more interesting, in different countries they have a different system. All those materials, statements, publications, interviews, and articles, messages, comments throughout those years are available at our website.
They're also valuable in Russian and translated into the main world languages. Read it. You'll see that this is the truth. Unfortunately, the current politicians in the EU and Berlin do not like this concept. They like to accuse us, threaten us, make up things about us that ostensibly for the fact that our country preserves historical truth, pursues our own independent policy. We want to be friends, to remember about the past. We do it in order to not make the same mistakes in the future that cost us a lot in the past. They do this when we said that it is unacceptable to involve the neighboring countries in NATO. This is not done for the development of their industry and infrastructure. this is done to involve them into anti-Russian ranks. This is why we're threatened. I would like to say that we have a strong historical memory. The Western war came to us at least once a century, and we remember how all of them ended. We remember how the Third Reich's coming close to our borders and how this ended, and we remember how that ended for them. If Berlin forgot about it, they can read about it. We have a lot of historical materials, including in German. Merz and his friends came even further. They do not want to limit themselves with eastern territories. They want to ensure security in North and Western Africa. The Third Reich went there as well. They need the Sahel region, the Middle East. This is the zone of their interest as well. They also want to counter Russian activity into Indo-Pacific region, as they say, and they want to protect their sea routes and communications. I have a question. But did they manage to ensure anything? Do they have any successes in this regard? No, they do not have such an experience. But we want to ask this question anyway, as follows. What is this for Germany in the Pacific Ocean? Probably they have an underwater tunnel. I don't know anything about it, but probably that's the recent developments. Probably Germans had better put things in order in their own country. They have a lot to fix bridges, to make their trains go in time according to the timetable. Probably they'd better develop their culture, theater. Maybe that they'd better support small-numbered peoples, not indigenous, but those that exist in Germany. Develop languages of the minorities on the territory of Germany, or probably start translating official documents published by the officials in Berlin into Turkish, into Arab, so that the people in Germany can understand them better. There's a lot to do. Medical care in Germany, probably this is an opportunity to invest. But no, Berlin has other plans. Their priority is to turn Bundeswehr into the most powerful army in Europe. But I thought that it was already appointed. And Berlin heard that, and Berlin applauds Zelensky when it was declared that it was the AFU, the Armed Forces of Ukraine. They want to increase the number of their army to almost 500,000 people, to be precise, 460,000 people. There's a program to rearm, to pump money, the military and industrial complex. The main newsmakers, the heads of the defense concerns, the Rheinmetall is among the front runners, but it is not from Germany, by the way. It is controlled by the U.S. capitals. The main shareholders are the well-known BlackRock. Its German head since in 2016 to 2024 was, as a coincidence, was Do you know who? The current Chancellor, Friedrich Merz. This is a coincide, don't you think so? Probably this is not something up to us, not because of us. Probably they should understand that it's not about Russia, but in the appetites of those who rule. Those financial, military and political gigantic companies that turned private business into conglomerates, killing German economy. This is exactly that what Ursula von der Leyen did. She did it not with the military enterprises, but with the pharmaceutical companies during the pandemic. The interest of the biggest companies and political, well, I cannot call it real, but manipulation that she did coincided, not for the interests of the people of the EU, not for the interests of people of Germany, but for the interests of those who profited of it, probably trillions. Now Mr. Merz does the very same thing. So let us ask yet another thing. Probably it's not our country that threatens the Germans. Probably the Germans are threatened by the German political elites because it did not feel free enough within the treaty about the ultimate settlement with Germany of 1990. Berlin forgot what the cultivation of hatred towards Russians and Russia ended for them. But we will remind them on May 9th, the day of our victory. I said that we'll remind about this to the sponsors of Zelensky regime. Let's look at what is going on in France. In the freedom of media, for example, it is very interesting because May the 3rd is the World's Day of the Freedom of the Press. The MFA of France issued a communique condemning attacks and acts of violence against journalists and media employees. It seemed to be a very good thing. Our Russian ministry had a relevant commentary as well. And we underlined that the goal of this date is to serve a reminder to the international community about the principles of the free access to information, media pluralism, and ensuring security and safety for journalists. But I think you already guessed that behind those good things declared by France, more vested interests were there. The French communique, as you understand, there's no mentioning about Russian journalists killed in 2025, for example, the correspondent of Channel 1, Anna Prokofyeva, operator of the Zvezda TV channel, Alexander Panov, journalists from Izvestia news outlet. Do you remember? Alexander Fedorchuk, Ivan Zuev from RIA Novosti, as well as many other Russian colleagues who were killed and suffered from the Kiev regime. They did not mention about a lot of foreign colleagues who were killed in the line of duty. Isn't it familiar? We see it not for the first time, how they say that they cut ties with the colonial past. The segregation, division of people. They yet again resort to the time-tested methods. But the German MFA seized the opportunity Well, okay, they omitted the Russian journalist. Probably they focused on their own problems. But this was not the case. The French MFA seized the opportunity to make an anti-Russian declaration yet again, saying that Russia targets the freedom of information, of the press. This message was followed up by Quai d'Orsay and the non-governmental organization Reporters Without Borders. In Russia, it is listed as unwanted. No international community talks about this. Are we responsible for this? No. On the contrary, we do everything we can to make them think about objectivity or the aspiration to be objective at the very least. Why do they do that to us? But it is clear, because this was in order. It's one more sphere where Russia can be villainized. Paris is not only one of the forefronters and initiators of the campaign to limit possibilities for the Russian media through illegitimate sanctions. They also actively implement their own instruments to control the information. Why didn't that mention that in their communique? Write about yourselves. If you don't have the material, I'll help you with that. After Emmanuel Macron won the presidential elections in 2018, the law on fighting information manipulations was passed. It introduced the all-national special regime for the media and platforms, including the possibility to stop the broadcasting of foreign media for fake news. On June 25th, 2024, the law was adopted in France on prevention of foreign interference. Those under the control of the Foreign State and Debt Act in France should be registered within 15 days and provide reports quarterly. In case they don't do that, the law provides for sanctions up to 3 years. Not of blogs or public service. No, up to 3 years in prison and a fine of 45,000 euros only for individuals. And for legal entities, it is up to 225,000 euros. Was this all forgotten by the employees of the French MFA when they wrote outrageous things about our country and freedom of speech? On October 29, 2025, at the International Conference of High-Level International Conference for Freedom of Information and Independent Media within the Paris Peace Forum, President of France called on to continue and take more control of the content of the content in the face of the threats from democracies. Some journalists are targeted by Ukrainian armed forces, but these cases, these journalists, are not something that should be prevented. They're not talking about this. People are killed, and they're talking about democracy. On the very money that Emmanuel Macron provides to Ukraine. Special attention is given to information or fight against Russia. There's a network of state organizations and affiliated NGOs. The leading role belongs to the National Agency for Fighting Foreign Digital Interference, Virginium. It is controlled by the French MFA. The activity of this agency is not transparent. It is looking for signs of foreign interference through closed algorithms and does not fight disinformation, but follows the foreign information activities in French information space. That's the democracy they're talking about. Based on the reports of this agency, French authorities can block any resource with information they don't like. The collaboration of Paris and the Reporters Without Borders also produced some results. This organization supported the idea of President of France to introduce science about the truthfulness of the published materials. This would divide the media into white, black, and gray, depending on how reliable they are. However, this idea was protested by the French public. The French public saw it as the risks to turn such certification into a tool of political manipulation. That is why this idea was not implemented. But who knows what ideas this NGO may have in their support of the President of France in the attempts to cleanse the French information space. Of course, this is done under the pretense of fighting Russian propaganda. As Prince Alexander Nevsky would say, you know, one of these days we're going to celebrate 805 years since his birthday. He said the power is not the God is not in the force, but in the truth. Despite all the bans, the outcome will be only one. The alternative sources of information will become more popular because what public is offered is not the reality. Almost at the same time with the statements of the French MFA, the National Assembly made a report saying that the positions of French media that seem to be unshakable in the French-speaking Africa are in the risks, not because they work badly, but because RT, China's media corporation, Al Jazeera, and other competitors are becoming more and more popular. French parliamentaries understood something that the rest of the world already knew. Outside the EU, the aggressive anti-Russian narratives are not understood and welcomed. The growing number of repressive bills against the freedom of speech is not something that is good in.
Now in the session of Moldova, we cannot stay silent about that, but because we heard many statements and actions directed against Russia, they are provoking us. On the 21st of April, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic, during his speech to the Council of Europe, stated that Moldova, please be patient while listening to me, that Moldova has become a lab vessel where they tested all possible tactics of Russian propaganda, hoping to find out which one will work, which of them will work, to apply them in the state parties of the European Union. Of course, they have not given any real examples. Now we see that we used to hear it from Zelensky that they were defending European Union from Russia. Now we hear the same from Moldova. They become a polygon, not even a laboratory, for experimentations of the West. And unlike those who make groundless accusations against us, we will back these up with facts. Official Chisinau, which declares its commitment to democratic values, is pursuing a consistent course to reduce the use of Russian language in education. On April 28th this year, at a meeting of the Kantemirovsky District Council, a decision was made by majority vote of the representative of the ruling Action Solidarity Party to close 2 gymnasiums with education provided in Russian. The formal pretext is a shortage of students, a lack of teaching staff, and lack of funds. The Central Moldovan authorities continue to exert pressure on Gagauzia. Its legally elected leader, Evgenia Gutsol, after extremely politicized trial, was sentenced to 7 years in prison and remains incarcerated to this day. On April 30th this year, the employees of the Russian embassy in Chisinau wanted to hand her a parcel containing food, books, and the congratulations from the Russian ambassador to Moldova, Mr. Ozerov, on the occasion of Victory Day. The Moldovan authorities refused this on the grounds of this being a dangerous cargo. Earlier, the ambassador was flatly denied permission to visit Madame Gutsol in prison. Historical revisionism has been cultivated in Moldova. On the eve of 81st anniversary of the victory, the Moldovan Ministry of Defense left unanswered the request of the Republic's search organizations to pay military honors to 16 Red Army warriors during the reburial ceremony of the remains at the Sherpani Bridgehead Memorial Complex on May 2 this year. This is not surprising. They have different priorities right now. Correspondingly, they have different heroes, namely the German Nazis and Romanian collaborators. Despite public protests, the UDO's 12th grade textbook, Historical History of Romanians and World History, which is full of outright fakes, remains in school curriculum. Experts have calculated that in the 4th chapter of the textbook alone, titled The Second World War Consequences for the Present, there are 38 factual errors. These would be considered just simple errors, but we know that they are intentional, and when talking like that, this is a premeditated criminal act. The Moldovan authorities are doing everything to tarnish the Soviet past. Meanwhile, interesting statistics have appeared in independent media. It turns out that 43% of Soviet-made vehicles are still being operated not by car enthusiasts or collectors, but the emergency services in Moldova. The average service lifespan is 34 years, and this is also interesting, taking into fact that Moldova still relies on the material base created during the USSR period and still narratively standing against the USSR. The similar situation applies to housing. More than 60% of current residential real estate was built in Soviet times before 1980. As political analysts note, under the current pro-Western authorities, Moldova has been turned into a large logistics hub, not for food or building materials or new technologies. No, they have become a major logistics hub for illicit drug trafficking. According to open source data, compared to 2024, the number of crimes involving drug addicts increased by almost a quarter in Moldova, only in last year. Experts point out that during her presidency, Madam Maya Sandu signed 22 pardons, almost half of which were for individuals not for mothers who wanted to get to the children or those who have committed any infraction due to the desire to provide medical aid or save them from attack. No, those pardons were granted to people condemned for drug crimes. It went so far as that on April 29th this year, the mayor of Chisinau openly accused the central authorities of complicity in the smuggling and distribution of narcotics drugs. This is the triumph of pseudo-democratic, destructive European project in Moldova, which has dragged the country into an abyss of political and socio-economic instability. But there are also good news. On the 28th of April in Vientiane, we had a ceremony of start of the use of the first stage of the Russian-Laotian Friendship Hospital Meetup Hub. The hospital was built in 1988 with the technical assistance of the USSR and one of the main medical establishments of the Lao PDR. In 2017, the government of the Russian Federation has adopted a decision to finance the modernization of the hospital, which has been carried out through the UN Office for Project Services. Russian contribution amounted to $13.2 million US. Currently, the planned works to reconstruct the first building have been completed by 92%. The third building is completed by 90%, and the erection of the second building has started. We have almost completed the creation of power unit and power units and grids, sewage and fire extinguishing systems. 2 buildings for staff have been commissioned, filled with employees and members of the family. So 34 tenders for medical equipment have been completed according to the wishes of the heads of the hospital. There has been a purchase of neurosurgery navigation system purchased, and as a result of this, the hospital will become the first medical instance in Lao Republic with advanced capabilities for neurosurgical operations. The finalization of the work is scheduled for March 2027, with a year controlled by the UN Office on monitoring on quality of offices and equipment. The agreement between the Russian Federation and this UN office it will conclude in March 2028. The innovation of one of the largest hospitals in Lao PDR has an important significance for the healthcare system in the country. We hope that this rebuilt hospital will become a visible symbol of Russian-Laotian friendship and mutually beneficial cooperation. On the 15th of May, we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the Russian Federation and the Kingdom of Cambodia. Our interaction is based upon a rich history. USSR and Russia have taken active part in the settlement of the Cambodian conflict and the preparation of Paris peace agreements in 1991. In Phnom Penh, with our assistance, there have been numerous facilities built, including the Hospital of Khmer and Soviet Friendship and the Supreme Technical School, which still serve the Cambodian people. The bilateral ties are based on the mutual trust and constructive cooperation, and they are bolstered by the joint declaration on the basics of friendly relations signed on 25th of May 1995. On our side, we pay huge importance to the support of this political dialogue, especially in the highest level, and development of links between foreign missions. Moscow and Phnom Penh are similar in our stances in the world arena, especially when it comes to global and regional agenda. We are improving our cooperation in the area of parliamentary work, political parties, and law enforcement agencies. There are measures to promote cooperation in trade, economy, and the science, technological, and cultural humanitarian domains. Our Intergovernmental Russian-Cambodian Commission has been functioning since 1997, and the 11th session of this commission will take place in April 2025. There are also important work being done in the area of training national human resources. Around 8,000 Cambodian citizens have finished their studies in different educational establishments in USSR and Russia. We are ready to continue providing assistance in training specialists and providing scholarships to Cambodian citizens. So we are providing support to Cambodia in improving the school meals in cooperation with the World Food Program. We are actively building and restoring basic infrastructure in the schools of the country. In the framework of celebrating the anniversary of diplomatic relations, there will be a huge cultural program, and there will be an exhibition of archive materials reflecting the main turning points of bilateral relations, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs will take part in the opening of this exhibition, 19th of May. The positive experience of cooperation creates good prerequisites for further improvement of the entire complex of Russian-Cambodian links, which responds to the interests of both our countries. We congratulate our Cambodian colleagues with our common holiday. We wish them all the best. Also, on May 13th, we'll be celebrating the 45th anniversary of the conclusion of the Treaty on Friendship and Cooperation between the USSR and the People's Republic of Congo, currently Republic of the Congo. Diplomatic relations between our countries have been established more than 60 years ago, on the 16th of March 1964. Currently, Russia and Congo are developing a multifaceted, mutually beneficial cooperation based on respect and consideration of interests of each other. Political dialogue is regular and constructive in character. Last week, the President of the Republic of the Congo, Denis Sassou Nguesso, visited our country with a state visit on 29th of April. He had negotiations with the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. On the 30th of April, he had a meeting with the chair of the Federation Council of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, Valentina Matviyenko. On the 1st of May, the leader of the Congo visited St. Petersburg when he met the governor of the city, Alexander Berglov. It's very symbolic that the visit to Russia has become the first official foreign trip of the President of the Congo after being re-elected on the 15th of March this year. At the inauguration ceremonies of the 16th of April, our country was represented by the Deputy Chair of the Government of Russian Federation, Alexander Novak. Our relations are highly dynamic. In 2025, the President of the Congo took part in the parade in the Red Square dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Second World War and the Great Patriotic War. We also witnessed prominent Russian-Congolese negotiations on the highest level. On the 3rd of September, the presidents of Russia and Congo had a meeting in Beijing on the sidelines of the events dedicated to the end of the Second World War. The Congo partners from the Congo are interested in the Russia-Africa format, and the head of the Republic of the Congo has taken part in the 2019 and 2023 summits, and we expect to see him at the third summit in autumn this year in the Russian capital. Moscow and Brazzaville are intended to develop mutually beneficial cooperation, and under the auspices of
успешно развивается партнерство в области медицины. С 22 по 23 апреля текущего года в столице Республики Конго прошла вторая российско-африканская международная конференция по борьбе с инфекционными заболеваниями, в которой приняла участие руководитель Роспотребнадзора Анна Попова.
Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, is expected to provide welcoming remarks to the participants. Among speakers, we expect to see the chair of the Committee of the Federation Council on International Affairs, Grigory Karasin, Minister on Youth Affairs of the Republic of Tatarstan, Azad Kadyrov, Director General of RT, Vera Harina, Director of the Direction of the World Youth Festival, Dmitry Ivanov, and representative of academia and other experts. There will be also a meeting, a traditional format with the with the head of the Republic of Tatarstan, Rustam Minnikhanov. There will be a dialogue with students and school children in Kazakhstan. There will be a visit to the international competition of young cooks with position of 10 countries, and association football match involving young diplomats and experts. And we expect 60 participants of the OIC countries. And concluding my introductory part, that I would like to say that we have a solemn occasion today, especially because on the 7th of May we are celebrating the Day of the Radio. On the 7th of May, this is a very important holiday for our country. 130 years ago, a prominent Russian scientist and inventor, Alexander Popov, conducted the first radio connection in the world. This event is the turning point in the development of the modern system of communications and the creation of entire domain of industry. Radio has come through a long period of transformations. New technologies appeared, the society changed, and this first transmitter was at the source of it. But the key role of radio is an operative and accessible spread of information was unchanged. The regular radio transmission in the country has started in 1924, and it's become an important instrument of uniting society and spreading information. Radio has become a part of our day-to-day life. It's still available everywhere, in every region, every city, in every village in our large motherland. The radio was especially important during the Great Patriotic War. In this difficult period, it has become a main source of news from the front lines, a symbol of hope and resilience. The radio point has become a voice of life for millions of Soviet citizens. In the besieged Leningrad, reproductors were transmitting the metronome sound. This was a signal that the city is alive and continues to resist. Talking about the radio, we cannot but mention Yuri Levitan, the legendary radio dictator, who's become a voice of the Soviet Union, known far beyond its reaches. And his unique timbre of the voice was heard by citizens in the turning points of our history. Let's remember his message about the unprovoked attack of the Nazi Germany against USSR, and the long-awaited news about the Victory Day, and the historical news about Yuri Gagarin flying into space.
Внимание!
Attention! This is Moscow speaking. All radio stations of the Soviet Union are working. This is the phrase that gives us shivers even now. And people become tearful, I'll tell you honestly this. This is not only a phenomenon of technological progress. This is the combination of technological progress, science, and human soul, humanity, deep humanity, that people can combine with technologies, and this can produce an important civilizational experience, not destructive experience. Today, despite the development of various technologies and the emergence of new media platforms, radio with honor continues to fulfill their main mission. It is still unites people as an accessible and quick source of information, travels beyond borders and distances. It helps and is still a universal tool of communication. and it is also relevant in the internet. That's why we congratulate on this holiday all those who work in the radio industry. Your dedication makes radio not only a source of information, but an important assistance. We wish you new achievements and all the best. I am prepared to answer your questions now. Is the International Affairs with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. Nemtsov Yuri, International Affairs Journal. I would like to congratulate everyone on the upcoming Victory Day. And I would like to get back to this topic. In the run-up to the Victory Day, tell us please about the work of the Russian MFA and Russian foreign missions in the preparation and holding of the internal regiment marches. What can you say about the wishes of the German police to ban the memorial events dedicated to the Victory Day? I talked about it in the introductory part. We will continue despite difficulties. Various events, theme-related roundtables, photo exhibitions, performances, patriotic and military games. We have and other events at the burials, care intended for the burial sites. What we try to do here is to preserve the site in order. This is also an opportunity to hold events including memorial services. We held dictatorship of the victory. Of course, we face a lot of opposition, but we will overcome all of this. The second question was about Germany. I talked about what they are doing there. Police in Berlin continue to go on with the worst traditions and practices and to ban the demonstration of the flags of USSR and Russia, the St. Georgian ribbons, the use of historical military uniform and their parts, the symbols V and Z. So they are soon going to ban all the alphabet. During the memorial events on the territory of 3 major military memorials in the German capital, this is a shame. This is a true shame, not only of Friedrich Merz, but of the whole country, for banning the symbols of victory. People want to glorify German Nazis who opposed the Brown Plague. This is not only about us, about Russia. This is also about German anti-fascist and anti-Nazis, the members of the underground movement in the 1930s that resisted Hitler and the Third Reich. This is them that he targets in the first place. Russian marches and military songs will be banned as well. These limitations won't cover only Russian diplomats and veterans of World War II. This is hypocritical and shameful. That's what I can say. It's what these elites are doing. Probably they're not even elites, but they are just a group of people who does not have the true interests of the German people at their hearts. They follow the agenda that leads Germany away from the national interests. This is nothing but shame. This is abuse of the memory of the people, of the all victims of genocide. These are attempts to rewrite history to suit current geopolitical purposes. But I would like to ask a question. Why, in the past, these songs could be sung in Germany, and now not? This is the question to the officials in Berlin. The only thing that changed is that now people in power in Germany are those who push the country to the precipice. The songs did not change, but the political goals changed. That's what happened in Germany 85 years ago. And that is something that they're trying to do. The people who try to reborn those things. Berlin still refused to recognize the siege of Leningrad and other crimes of Nazis against Soviet peoples as acts of genocide. And unfortunately, the current German ruling elite could not learn the lessons of the history and make some conclusions. But these people came in power in Berlin by those who did it before, who put these people in charge. Is Ria Novosti with us? Good afternoon, Ria Novosti. I would like to congratulate you with the upcoming holiday. Thank you. Thanks to you. We have two questions to you today. First, Yerevan held the large-scale events under the umbrella of the EU. What can you say about this, given the Russian-Armenian relations, in the light of the fact that Yerevan saw the leaders of the countries whose policies built on the country in Russia? We'll see on certain steps that will follow up. But we have the first impression of that political show. It was a beautiful cover that Brussels, Paris, and other EU politicians tried to present as try to sell in the pre-election period in Armenia. They relied on Armenia, but in a very bad sense of that word. If it's not yet again example of interfering into internal affairs, what that is. After reading the text of the final declaration, it becomes clear that the Republic is involved more and more into European mechanisms and standards. This policy of the Armenian authorities will lead to involvement of Yerevan into anti-Russian policy of Brussels, with all political and economic consequences for Armenia. The EU formula is very easy. It is strange that no one understands that. Is to squeeze everything out of Armenia, to use it in their own interests without giving anything back. Besides these PR actions, they don't give money, technologies, possibilities for cooperation, goods, Armenian goods to go to their markets. Only these hilarious attempts to take performers there that make up some kind of performances and then leave, leaving their smiles while exiting. In practical sense, Armenia did not receive anything. It is telling that in the statement, Yerevan is yet again promised investment worth of 2.5 billion euros. To be honest, I stopped counting how many times the EU attempted to play with these expectations. These figures, these 2.5 billion euros, has been selling to Armenia not for the first time. This figure was named in 2021. This figure, 2.5 billion euros, was promised to Armenia by the Westerners. It's been 5 years. Over these years, can this be implemented? Could they at least allocate a couple of millions of euros? Of course, but this money is something that Armenia never saw. They want to harm Russia very much, but they don't want to provide money for that. Even if they provide those money as loans, yet again, as loans, and ordinary people in Armenia won't see a dime of it. People of Armenia will work to ensure interests of Brussels to pay off the interest. They will pay these Euro-Atlantic charges. For example, they'll have higher tariffs for electricity. According to the joint statement, Armenia welcomes the closing down of their own NPP. I don't know how if this reflects the interests of Armenia. It's not up to me to judge, but France does not close down the NPPs. Germany wants to rebuild and start to use their own nuclear energy again. They first refused it and then realized that it was a huge strategic mistake. All countries in the world think about additional possibilities for energy, where can get additional resources given the AI, etc. It requires a lot of resources and energy, but in this case, country strips itself from the possibility to have more money. That is telling. If we listen more attentively the words of leaders and officials from Brussels, it becomes clear. They care about decreasing our cooperation, Russian influence in the South Caucasus. Emmanuel Macron thought that Russian military presence should be eliminated. Russia-Armenia cooperation in security, border protection, economy, culture are solely the interests of Moscow and Yerevan, and Paris has nothing in this. They spoke that Armenia can become the center of regional communications. This was presented as a European experience. In reality, Moscow was at the root of these processes. All the work have been done within the trilateral working group under the co-presidency of vice premiers of Russia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan 2021-2023. Without Russian participation, it is not the full-fledged rebuilding of transport corridors is not possible. The Russian public was outraged and did not understand. They first remembered the fact that we are used to consider Armenia as a friendly country, but it became the podium for the head of the Nazi Kiev regime, who was received with quite hospitality in Yerevan. Zelensky used this hospitality of the Armenian host and to make appearance with yet again Russophobe narratives. Some did it on purpose, some as coincidence, but this was the revelation for Armenia what real European values mean. Zelensky was supported by the EU, and after that, look what Zelensky has done to his own people and country. I think that it is wonderful, in my opinion, that Zelensky visited Yerevan these days. It's better for the people in Armenia to see who is the symbol for Brussels of their successful policy. It is the violent Kiev regime that commits terror attacks against civilians daily in other countries. But the most important thing is something different. Zelensky destroys and kills its own country and people, Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Without this example of our words, wouldn't be understood and clear. Zelensky showed the people in Armenia their future prepared for them by the EU.
I don't know who did that. This is not a mistake. This is a true gift to show the Armenian people the suckling of the European regimes, who has become a manifestation of what European Union is doing with the so-called young democracies. He was dreaming about the necessity of militarizing Ukraine and the entirety of Europe, but he forgot to add whether Armenia was part of the militarization project. Will it also be made up to standard of European front lines? He talked about new anti-Russian sanctions. Who he was talking about that to? To the Armenian citizens who are cooperating with Russian businesses, create joint ventures with our citizens. Why didn't they add his speech by saying that anti-Russian sanctions will be directly damaging Armenian companies, Armenian citizens, Armenian businesses, and the well-being of Armenians? Why did they stay silent about that? They did, and the situation in itself demonstrated everything and unveiled everything that was hidden before. The ideas, narratives, as they like to say in the West. Zelensky tried to push the Western countries towards a direct confrontation with our countries in the territory of Armenia, which repeatedly received support from our country. I doubt that. Anytime soon we forget that from the land of our ally, whose Belarus people contributed immensely to our joint great victory over Nazism in the Great Patriotic War, we will it's unlikely that we will forget that the current Kiev ruler spread threats about striking Moscow during the yearly parade in the sacred day of 9th of May. He threatened to strike against Moscow, where there will be veterans of the Great Patriotic War, including from Armenia itself. There will be citizens of our country, the citizens of our countries, ethnic Armenians, for example. He threatened to strike against Moscow, where near the Kremlin wall, the very Kremlin wall, has a grave of Ivan Bagramyan, an Armenian-born military commander who is honored both in both our countries, and no one from among the Armenian political establishment didn't dare to say anything counter to Zelensky. And my question is, who are you supporting in the historical context? It's exactly that this turning away from our country and the historical idea of truth that the leadership of Armenia chose to do this. And in recent visits to Moscow, they assured us that they would not take any steps directed against Moscow. And if it's the case with the statements of Armenian authorities, then it's not only our citizens that they are behaving this way to. Those actions will make it more difficult for Russian-Armenian relations. And I have my second question, if you allow me. This question concerns Armenia once again. The chair of the National Assembly of Armenia, Len Simonyan, recently made a statement saying that Armenian authorities will not allow Moscow to make a region out of Armenia, and that they wouldn't be ruled from abroad like Belarus. How would you comment on these statements? Once again, I would like to say that Belarus has already commented on that, and we will provide the link to their comment in the text of our briefing. But in my opinion, the chair of the National Assembly of Armenia, and Simonyan, is just jealous of the results achieved by Armenia, while his country, headed by his team, didn't manage to reach. It was just pure jealousy. If you wanted to test what I've said, just come to Belarus. I've been there. I have not just in Minsk. I've been in several cities. And I was traveling not with some protocol columns. We just took a car and we went to visit numerous cities and towns in Belarus. And what can I say? The Belarus success in industrial, economical, and other areas cannot be reached by the likes of Alen Simonyan. And I call on everyone, call on bloggers and media personalities in Armenia. Please come to Belarus. Just go there and show Mr. Simonyan the achievements of the Belarusian people and their leadership. I can say that it is an earnest European kind of advice. For example, Polish citizens are regularly coming to Belarus. You know for what reason? They are buying groceries. They are buying Belarusian products that is distinguished by high quality and by the mere effects of its manufacturing and the rigorous demands that exist when it comes to producing food and other products. Just look at Belarus, how they honor the traditions, how they preserve historical memory, how they transfer information and knowledge on their culture and etc. from generation to generation, how they are telling stories, how Belarus was, how they were trying to just, how the existence of Belarus was threatened. I don't remember them stopping informing their citizens about all the deeds the Nazis did in the territory. They continue to conversate in that midst, nonetheless, to prevent the reoccurrence of those malevolent acts that happened 8 years ago. I've been to Brest. I've been in the Brest fortress when our delegation visited. I visited it also on my own with my family. I see that together with the industrial, technological, cultural, humanitarian development of Belarus, they are recreating some memorials that are very difficult to reconstruct. Those memorials are linked with the heroic deeds of their people. And I see the opportunity and capability of the country to develop the media. Just look how IT technologies are developing in Belarus. Just look how sports are being developed. Everything that was said by Mr. Simonon can be perceived uniquely as an inhuman jealousy in regards to the success of this country and the people that didn't do anything to offend him. Just go there, see for yourself. I did, and I formed my own opinion. And the second thing I would like to mention is that Armenian delegation that came with Alen Simonyan conducted verbatim recording of the meeting. Perhaps they recorded what Mr. Simonyan was saying in within the midst of the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation. Perhaps they would be wise to publish what his words were. Thank you. Is Sputnik with us? Yes, good afternoon. Julius Benjamin, Sputnik Africa. I would like to ask the corresponding question. The U.S. Chairing the G20 currently have practically excluded the South African Republic from the events in 2026, inviting Poland instead of South Africa. Africa is practically deprived of a voice on one of the key global platforms. How would this, in your opinion, be reflected on the trust of the African countries to such international formats, and how you evaluate the probability of the fact that such decisions would become an instrument of pressure against states not following the Western line, and which signal this sends to the global South? The deposition of the South African Republic by the United States in the unilateral format from the G20 processes violates the basic principles of the functioning of the G20 and the practice of adopting any decisions by consensus. The Washington's logic met resistance not only among the world majority countries, but also among its traditional allies that understand that those actions are fraught with bad consequences in the international arena. I'd just like to remind everyone why G20 was created back in 2008. The U.S. became the cause for the global financial crisis. The bubble of their property markets collapsed, and there was a huge tsunami that affected financial institutions of different countries. And just to try to deal with it, G20 was created, reuniting countries that with one of the most important declared tasks to ensure the more voting power of countries with a forming and developing market economy to increase the level of their representation. As was noted at the first summit of G20 in Washington, it was hoped that this would allow the world to overcome this monstrous financial crisis that was caused not by, I would like to say, American democracy, but no, rather American economical democracy. In G20, there is a successful coordination mechanism of BRICS countries and other economies with the forming markets. In this framework, we maintain close dialogue and feedback with South African partners, including in the G20 issues. I would like to point out that South African Republic is not the only African participant of G20. In 2023, the African Union also joined this organization. With our like-minded countries, we hope that G20 will be more responding to the global South, which will allow for the shift of balance of interest of West countries to the new centers of power. So what about Poland? According to research practice, countries presiding in G20 have in their power to invite other participants not members of G20. This is a one-time act which has nothing with to do with membership in the group. And the very idea of replacing where for Poland is incorrect. Is Izvestia with us? Yes, greetings, Madam Zakharova. I have a question that my question is that Slovakia doesn't see any obstructions, that they have that they see no barriers towards resuming electric supplies to Ukraine. How does such position of Bratislava could influence the energy sustainability of Kiev regime? As we understand, on the 4th of March 2026, the government of Slovakia has adopted a decision to stop the agreement between Slovakia and Ukraine about the emergency supply of electric energy as a response to the cessation of oil transit through the Druzhba oil pipeline. The commercial shipments have not been touched upon by this, but the share of electric energy from Slovakia to Ukraine is matches more than around 10% of the common export from the EU countries. This means that such a resolution by Bratislava will not significantly influence the energy sustainability for Ukraine, but the signal is noted. My second question, that the UK's authorities are intending to join the common European loan for Ukraine with a total size of 90 billion euros. Keir Starmer has confirmed that he's intending to cooperate with EU in the military sphere. What do you think? Isn't this an attempt by Britain to return influence in the foreign affairs through the escalation of conflict in Ukraine? The role of the kingdom in unleashing and the constant maintenance of the scale of the conflict in Ukraine is well known. Even before the special military operation in London, they didn't conceal that they view this country as a geopolitical instrument intended against Russia. And throughout some years, the UK tried to demonstrate leadership in Europe when it comes to the support of Ukrainian puppet regime and mobilization of foreign aid to the AFU by bolstering and boosting the morale of their proteges in Kiev. The UK is trying to hold them to steer them in the anti-Russian course, which is detrimental to them, and trying to raise the stakes. They are also pushing the EU partners and NATO to a dangerous brink, which could result in a new global conflict. I would like to point out that the failing Ukrainian project is being used by them to improve their own positions in Europe that have been shaken after Brexit. Perhaps they are not ready to cooperate in Brussels on the social, economic, and law enforcement questions their interest, and thus we see that the British authorities are trying to find those spheres that could give some political or compensatory dividends to London. They should understand, and I mean the European countries part of the EU, perhaps they should understand that the authorities of the UK that are not even in the first league of world policy anymore cannot really handle all the weight of responsibility that they're trying to take upon themselves, and they are not really realizing the destructive and catastrophic consequences of the destructive policy for international and regional security. If we see this is not bringing any positive results, but only destruction. If we eliminate all embellishments, we can only see that there are just provoking more and more continuation of clashes, and they're trying to conceal their predatory and egoistical desires by this. This is only confirming the fact that London is not interested in settling the situation in Ukraine and are doing everything in their power to protract the bloodshed. The British authorities are using their policy not to leave the Kiev regime any chance to come out of the conflict through negotiations, but they are, as usual, arrogant and self-confident in protracting the suffering of the Ukrainian peoples. And they are doing everything to say that they are supporting the democratic future in Ukraine, but they are just protracting, just spending time to damage Ukraine as much as possible and then to take possession of everything that remains. Thank you. Is RT with us? Yes, RT Balkans. I would like to wish you happy upcoming holiday. We have one question that the president of the Council of Independent Social Democrats, Milorad Dodik, stated that on the 7th of May he will be headed to Moscow, but on the 9th of May he will take part in the military parade dedicated to Victory Day. How would you comment his presence during the Victory Day, and what does it mean for the relation between Republika Srpska and Russia?
High delegation from the friendly Republic Srpska will yet again participate in the events dedicated to the Victory Day in Moscow this year. I would like to get back to this issue after the events. They will be covered widely, but if I may, I'll talk about it later. Yes, thank you. Is Xinhua with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. China recently blocked the implementation of the sanctions against 5 Chinese companies that allegedly traded Iranian oil. The Chinese government opposes unilateral sanctions adopted without the endorsement of the United Nations, and it has no grounds in the international law. What's Russian opinion about the steps of China? We express full solidarity with our Chinese friends. We think that process of emergence of a more just and sustainable multiple world order has no alternative. We reject aggressive policy of a number of countries in the logic of hegemonism and neocolonial mindset. We reject attempts to defend their privileges through limiting sovereignty of independent countries, peoples, and states. These rules were made up not in Beijing but in Washington. But when Washington started to lose under their own rules to other countries, the United States decided to change their plans, to change their policy, to change their rules of the game. Such discriminatory measures and illegal trade limitations are harmful not only to exchange of trades between certain countries, they destroy global trade and economic cooperation. Trade and logistics chains lead to fragmentation of global trade. All this situation, in my opinion, can be described with a Russian word. That word's not to set traps to others, or you'll be trapped yourself. We welcome the decision of the government of China. Since 2010, it's been our major trade partner. We condemn such unilateral trade limitations. They are legitimate. I'll underline that yet again. We will continue closely coordinate our steps with our Chinese friends in the international arena to minimize consequences of economic restrictions from our common enemies, and to find optimal routes to maintain mutual beneficial cooperation. Is Rachel with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova, we are here. We have one question today. We would like to ask this question on the request of our colleagues from Seoul. They work on the material about the surge in demand for cars in North Korea. It is noted by specialists that the cars are imported from China, but the fuel is supplied from Russia. They cite the data of Open Source Center and BBC. They say that in the 8 months of 2024, the supplies of oil products from the Russian Federation to North Korea exceeded 1 million barrels. That exceeds the UN cap of 500,000 barrels a year. What can you say about the supplies in 2024, 2025, and 2026? What treaties regulate these supplies? First, I would like you to say to those who wanted this question answered, they should do it in person. But if they wish to ask it themselves, journalists can be accredited from any place in the world. The notification, the procedure to notify states about the possible cap exceedance is clearly stated in item 5 of the UN Security Council resolution number 2397. And the authority to issue such notification belonged to Secretary of the Committee 1718 at the UN Security Council as to the truthfulness of this data. No one knows about Open Source Center, and BBC is known for their falsified materials. We talked about it many times. We'd recommend the authors to ask for the information resources at these agencies. Look, item 5 of the relevant resolution of the UN Security Council. There's a verified source of information. According to this item, thanks to you, is the media, China Media Corporation with us. Good afternoon. I would like to congratulate everyone on the upcoming Victory Day. We would like to talk about the only one question, but about Japan. May the 3rd marked the 80th anniversary of the Tokyo Tribunal. That very day, Prime Minister of Japan arrived to Australia with a visit. The main goal of the visit is to promote strategic policy of Japan in the Indo-Pacific region, including the updated concept of the free and open Indo-Pacific region, deeper cooperation in supply and chains for critical minerals, and expansion of defense cooperation. Some experts note that the current actions of Japan are even more misleading than the previously aggressive expansion. The Japanese government hypes up for external threats, gradually change the mindset of the Japanese people. What does Russia think about it? We talked about the anniversary of the Tokyo process during the previous briefing. I will provide the link in the text of the briefing. I'll only say that we're in close contact with the experts from the Centers for Japanese Studies in Russia. They analyze closely the actions of the officials in Tokyo and systematically share their predictions and conclusions with us. What is going on today in Japan is something that involves the interests of the Russian Federation. The actions of Tokyo creates potential threats and challenges to the security of our country in the Far East. We regularly express our demarches to the Japanese sides through official channels and warn that we will have to make response measures. Recently, the Japanese MP Moneo Suzuki visited Moscow, shared our ideas and evaluations with him directly. You can find information about his visit to Moscow on our official website. He met with Deputy Foreign Minister Rudenko and Galuzin. Thank you. Thank you. Is Bold News with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We congratulate you on the upcoming Victory Day. In Estonia, saw more tours to the Russian border. People go to Narva to be part of the celebrations of the Victory Day of Vanguard. In general, a lot is done to attract attention of the authorities of the EU to what is going on in Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. Why do the Estonian authorities oppose the aspiration to people to celebrate this event? We talked about anti-Nazi movement in Europe in 1930s, 1940s. People in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia have police neo-Nazi regimes. They oppose the outcomes of World War II. They fight symbols of the Great Patriotic War, but people know the truth. They can access the truthful information. They remember the history of their families, and you can see how the regimes in these countries keep silent about the fact that not all people from these countries were part of the punishing units of SS, but a lot of people contributed to the defeat of the Brown Plague. For example, as part of 130th Lithuanian Corps, 8th Estonian Corps, 16th Lithuanian division. The film Victory Day in the Baltic States yesterday, today, tomorrow was premiered one of these days. It was described as honest, objective. It makes people care, and it is honest. We published this film at our official website. I understand that Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn do not like that. That's why they are angry with it. They are only a tool, just like Vladimir Zelensky. But these countries are not even colonies in the hands of the EU. The true industry, science, culture, and other things does not exist in these countries. But our will continue protecting historical justice and inform the international community with all means possible the truth about the abuses of this memory about the Great Patriotic War in the Baltic States. If people in these countries want to receive information from us, they can do that freely. We are always open. Whether it comes to in our books, films, other information, other events that they can visit in person, they can attend in person. These people have all the possibilities to access the source information and organize the events. Their predecessor fought Nazism. This is important. Is the newsletter of Caucasus with us? Oh, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We congratulate you on the upcoming Victory Day, and I congratulate you too. Thank you. What does Russian MFA think about the decision of Baku to stop any cooperation with the structures of the European Parliament adopted in response to yet another 14th anti-Azerbaijanian resolution? You know, this is a sovereign decision of Baku to stop any contacts with the so-called European Parliament. This comes as no surprise. Azerbaijan is not the only state that faces disrespect of the structure, direct interference into internal affairs of sovereign states. The resolution is anti-scientific. It is not only politicized, they are fake. This structure rubber stamps these resolutions as a broken printer machine. They have a mentor tone, just like a metropolitan city talks to their colonies. It's just like Napoleon in the next room tries to give orders to the medical personnel. Today, the European Parliament is anti-democratic in its essence. This platform has become one more center to incite phobias, aggressions, fake spreading, fighting freedom of speech, falsification and manipulation of history under the pretense to protect and ensure sustainable democracy. This has nothing to do with real democracy. The actions of the European Parliament lost a lot of trust within the EU. This is no secret that the opinion of people in the EU is ignored. People in the EU countries try to protect their opinions, but the European Parliament does the opposite things. They does not care about the opinion of people who vote for those in the European Parliament. Those who want more respectful relations in Europe with the global majority want to come to power, but they are prevented from that. They are blocked. We understand that other European structures have dialogue with Baku. They have all the sovereign right for this. A recent example is the visit of the High EU Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, on May 5th. Thank you. Is news.ru with us? No, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Yes, we are here. We have two questions. You touched upon one of the questions, but I would like to get back to that because it is extremely relevant. You talked about the statement of Vladimir Zelensky in Yerevan on May 4th about the threats to strike with drones against the victory parade in the Red Square on May 9th. Wasn't our yesterday's commentary enough? But are these statements considered to be direct planning of a terrorist attack? And what does Russia do preventively? In yesterday's commentary and in the first part of the briefing, I said that the threats to attack the victory parade on May 9th with Ukrainian drones that President Zelensky voiced at the meeting of European leaders in Yerevan were heard and won't be underestimated. Given the value of this historical date, the plans to use drones during a parade seem cynical. Only those who does not understand the mechanics of the creation of the Kiev regime and how it is used, how it works. I'll tell you yet again, these statements were made with the acquiescence, silent acquiescence, and even an endorsement of the European leaders. This describes them. This shows their plans and reveals the cards that they had before that. This is exactly what they wanted.
In the central square of the Russian capital, there will be people paying respects to those who have perished fighting the German invaders. People will be celebrating the victory over the enemy, namely the veterans will be celebrating, the veterans of the Second World War and the invited heads of foreign states. Numerous guests, civilians, onlookers from our country and abroad. It's just a general statements, and the details. For details, you can address the President's Executive Office and etc. This is about the way how our country feels and what we are standing against. And we are witnessing an act completely beyond all reason and any rules of politeness. And this is being propagated by the NATO-centric structures. So the open threats by Zelensky to attack Moscow and the victory parade This is a threat to the entirety of world community that laid it in the foundation of the system not to forget about the lessons of the war, to keep it for decades. And then we see this chupacabra from the Kiev regime, I cannot say another word, and start to threaten the world that they will conduct a terrorist strike against the victory parade. This is a monstrous idea, but on the other hand, this is necessary for those who are still doubting anything about the whole act. That perhaps this was they couldn't see due to Western propaganda, but now you see everything as it is, and what they are trying to fight, and why now exactly? Because the generation is going away. We're saying goodbye to them, to our dear veterans, and they see that there are not enough veterans, and they've unleashed their revanchism. They're trying to infringe upon the memory of their own generation of anti-fascists and the veterans of the Second World War. Open threats made by Zelensky to attack Moscow and the parade, the holiday of 9th of May, are perceived by us as an attempt to commit a terrorist attack, and we already said that directly, and we already delineated the ways we would respond if it were to happen. We honestly told the entirety of the world community by sending a corresponding note for all possible diplomatic channels. This was not just one singular statement on our website, or just some statement or comment by our ambassador or permanent representative. No, this was goal-oriented work with the entirety of the world community, where diplomatic note is spread and directed to all states and international organizations. And when this was done, it was published at our website for no one to be able to say that we didn't warn against such acts. Everything that Zelensky was doing, what he continues to do, matches the faulty logic of the Zelensky regime. Is not even hiding their culpability in the terrorist attacks. They are parading it. They are receiving money for that. Tranches, weapons, and political support. Illicit attacks against Russian civil infrastructure and peaceful population are being conducted in their desire to create a popular response. They're trying to sow panic, create chaos. They're trying to scare the population. This is a terrorist logic, and they're not even hiding it. The Westerners tried to cover this with the veil of some autumn leaves. They tried to embellish upon it. But what they did in Yerevan, you cannot hide it by any means. This has already been laid in the annals of history. And this is a part of world history. Zelensky openly threatened to strike the victory parade on the 9th of May, and the Western leaders stayed silent. And in Yerevan, no one stopped him. As for the possible measures, I think there have been already exhaustive comments being provided by both Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in support of the MOD statement. And my second question, in continuation of the first one, how does Moscow comment the statement of Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland's statement that the war in Ukraine will not end in 2026, and that negotiations reached a dead end. How does Russia evaluate its position of European leaders? Is it a conscious policy of protracting the conflict? If you allow me, I give additional attention to this question and Mr. Stoops separately. There are a lot of things that can be said, providing historical parallels, and remind everyone about it. Thank you. I would like to congratulate through you the entirety of the collective Minister of Foreign Affairs and to wish them all the best. And the same to you. Thank you. Is Kyoto Tsusin with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova, I have a question about relations between Japan and Russia. As you know, recently Japanese MP Suzuki Muneo went to Moscow, and there's been information appearing about the meeting between Deputy Minister Mr. Yurudenko and his meeting with Mr. Galuzin. And in the aftermath of this meeting, Mr. Rudenko said that if the Japanese side is willing, a meeting could be organized in the framework of the meeting of Minister of Foreign Affairs of ASEAN, which will take place in Manila in July this year in the Philippines. If such a meeting is requested, it could be organized. But this information has been mentioned by only the MP Suzuki Muneo, but could you confirm that or not? And are there any conditions from the Russian side to conduct the meeting of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan and Russia? Because there have been such meetings since September 2021. It is my humble request for your commentary, and I would also like to wish you a happy upcoming holiday. On the part of official Tokyo, they haven't been any requests on the organization of Russian-Japanese meetings of a high level on the sidelines of international events. So of course, if we receive such a request, we will be duly taking it into account. So for now, there's no sense in giving any comments on this question, including the possible agenda. There's no sense in that. Once again, confirmed that way to resume full-fledged interstate dialogue with Japan will open if the Japanese leadership will reject in kind the current hostile course towards our country and will support it with concrete steps. This will be confirmed by their actions. The very position was the member of parliament Suzuki Muneo was informed exactly his position during his meeting on May 4th. Thank you. Is TV Plus with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova, Tbilisi is with you right now. Madam Zakharova already witnessed what is going on in Germany. I just wanted to like to inform them that this is our common victory, because Mr. Cantaria was one of the ones who placed the banner in Berlin. So this is our common victory. In the experts, now my question: the experts in the public circles, there are now talks about necessity of conducting a third stage of a forum dedicated to Russian-Georgian relations in Moscow with an extended complement of participants, politicians, journalists, and religious officials, not only from Georgia but the entirety of the world. Considering that the fact that this initiative has already found its support in the State Duma, and particularly in the CIS Affairs Committee, is the Russian MFA on their end ready to support this idea of holding this important forum in Moscow? And what are the further steps do you think are possible to reinforce and develop this positive dialogue? Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. When you were asking your question, in the first part of the question, you said that this victory was our common affair. We will not give it to anyone. It's reminded me of a song from the movie Belaruski Rail Terminal, that we don't care about the price. The times have come. If our ancestors were living under the slogans and mottos of there is one victory for everyone, don't care about the price, and we're talking about this victory. And now, in continuation of this song, we could add this line that this victory is one for all. We will not give it to anyone, as you said it. And then perhaps we could continue it with that we will not allow it to be destroyed. This is the very same rhyming structure with a new sense, similar in form, but it remains the same. Please, I also wish you a happy upcoming holiday. This is our common holiday, of course, and the second holiday, in my opinion, is pertaining to the Georgian people and in Georgia as a state. I saw that there were attempts to force Georgia to abolish the serious treatment of the topic of victory. There have been attempts to rewrite history, and they were trying to fight against monuments too, trying to eliminate the memory. All this was done by those who were representing the Western interest, and luckily we saw a second victory of Georgian people, that this wasn't allowed, that the memory was defended, and that immortal regiment manifestations are still being conducted. The Georgian ribbon is still being worn, because it was worn by those who were heroes of the Second World War, the Great Patriotic War. The second part of the question, and the main part of the question, yes, of course, our ministry is principally always in favor of representative of public organizations, academia, and experts, and in the conditions of a lack of diplomatic relations between Russia and Georgia, we always underline the importance of developing such dialogue, necessity of free and frank exchange of opinion, the search for new ways of cooperation and building relations of trust. We can all consider this an investment in the future resumption of good neighborly relations between the countries. We will be ready to comment on this in more detail after receiving additional information on the organizers, the number of participants, and the thematic program, and the task of the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Is Sade Irus with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova, I would like to wish you the happy upcoming Victory Day. I have two questions for you. On the 1st of May, there was the 78th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Russia and Pakistan. How would you evaluate the current state of relations between our countries? And how does Russia view the development of a direct air traffic between Russia and Pakistan? Are there any prospects towards opening direct flights? Russia and Pakistani relations are traditionally friendly. They are developing progressively. We consider Pakistan our reliable partner in South Asia. We support a very substantive and constructive political dialogue. I would like to mention also the negotiations between the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif in Tanzania in September 2025, and the short meeting in Ashgabat in December 2025. There are also regular contacts of foreign ministries. On 24th of April, there was a telephone conversation between the Minister Lavrov and Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Muhammad Ishaqdar, during which, as you know, they were discussing relevant aspects of Russian-Pakistani interaction and the situation in the Persian Gulf. Interparliamentary inter-agency cooperation is also on the rise. In November 2025, there was a 10th session of the Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic and Scientific Technological Cooperation, which gave additional impulse to the bilateral interaction in metallurgy, pharmaceutics and energy in the materials field. We pay special attention to the cooperation in the area of transport. We are working on the organization of testing transcontinental cargo transfers in the framework of the International North-South Transport Corridor. We're convinced that as our cooperation broadens, there will be prospects to launch direct flights between our countries. This is in view of our relevant agencies. My second question, you already commented on that. We have been preparing materials about the Great Patriotic War for our audience. In that regard, I would like to ask the following question. On the eve of the Victory Day, what are the main principles Russia outlines this year in regards to the preservation of memory about the Great Patriotic War? How does Russia form its position as one of the victor countries in the Second World War in the conditions of the current international tensions? Thank you. The preservation of historical memory is our main principle, unchanging year to year, because without the preservation of historical memory, we wouldn't be able to convince anyone about the necessity of preserving law and order in the world. Perhaps it would be a hard task to ensure everyone about the necessity of human rights, etc., and the right approach to dealing with the traditional values. This is all founded upon historical truth. Exact examples of dehumanization that the world witnessed in the 20th century: gas chambers, segregation of persons according to racial principle, the extermination of different peoples and nationalities. This is all monstrous crimes conducted by German Nazis and Japanese militarists. We will not forget that. We will continue to tell everyone that there are human rights, that you need to be good, that you should fight for peace. And if it's forgotten, we will not be able to do that, because the memory of those who fought for this peace and for human rights, if this memory is forgotten, we will not be able to tell about errors humanity made and the feats of humanity. Just the fact that the other part of humanity also committed crimes. This is our main principle, namely the preservation of historical memory. Its importance is only growing more relevant. As one of the victorious countries, we took part in the post-war settlement, including the creation of UN, the Nuremberg Tribunal, and the forming of international legal framework of relations. Also in the decolonization process, which only became possible after the Allied coalition was victorious over the Third Reich and all of its satellites.
Our country, as the state that continues the USSR and sustained the most losses, 27 million people, feels the danger of this approach the most. When part of those losses were among civilians, they took place when we stopped the spread of this ideology. If we didn't do that, we would have been destroyed completely. That's what they wanted to do with us. And this is clearly seen. I mean, our approach is seen in the resolutions at the UN General Assembly initiated by Russia, fighting the glorification of Nazism. And for some reason, this resolution was voted against On December 15, 2025, the draft resolution was adopted in the 21st time. The co-sponsors were 44 states from all regions of the world, including Pakistan. 119 states supported the document, the global majority, but 10 countries abstained. But who was against? The 51st country of the so-called collective West. And first of all, the EU. All publicly stated their true wishes and plans. As one of the former leaders in the EU, Mr. Borrell said that they see themselves as a prospering garden and the rest of the world as a jungle. This is their approach: discrimination, domination, rules that no one is aware of besides them. The true historical aggression at the institutional level. This policy includes resolutions of the European Parliament. They ascribe the similar responsibility for those events to the USSR, evenly with Nazi Germany. That's how they act. In certain countries, people fight the monuments, marches take place, whose supporters glorify Nazis. This cannot be justified by any means. This is the neo-Nazism, the result of radical nationalism and neo-Nazism is something that we see in Ukraine. There was an attempt to build a Russophobe footing place. They destroy Ukrainians in Ukraine with the hands of Zelensky, and they physically destroy history and faith, by the way. The key principles of preservation of historical truth is clearly stated in the concept of humanitarian policy of the Russian Federation abroad, endorsed in 2022. Russian MFA regularly prepare theme-related reports about this. They are available at our website. The truth is still hidden from a lot of people in the West, and we have to join our efforts. Otherwise, our history will be rewritten, will be destroyed. Is Lenta.ru with us? Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Lenta.ru. We have 3 questions for you today. If I may. Just a second. We have 3 questions. On May 4th, Austria declared 3 Russian diplomats persons non grata because of a lot of antenna on the roof of the embassy that ostensibly can be used for spying. Are there any signs, any reasons to be afraid of similar things happening in Moscow? If we judge by antennas, let's look at the number of antennas at the embassies of unfriendly regimes in Moscow. In general, I commented on this in the first part of the briefing. Thank you. Prime Minister of Finland, Petri Orno, was unhappy with the violation of the airspace of the Republic by Ukrainian drones. What do you think about it? I don't know what they don't like about it. They finance those drones. They provide means and technologies for that. NATO create things. They produce those drones, and now they don't like that. This is how the European elites work. They express their unhappiness, but does nothing to stop that. Finland continues to build up supplies of armaments, including lethal, to the Kiev regime. The total volume of those supplies today is about 3.2 billion euros. Helsinki is one of the leading countries in terms of the ratio of supplies to the GDP of the country. At all possible platforms, representatives of Finland continue to talk about some long-term Russian threat that ostensibly exists and fantasize about the scenarios of possible military attack from Russia in future. They participate in NATO exercises, and they do not hide that. They even encourage this logic. The real, physically felt threat to the security of the Finnish society is there as in the shape of Ukrainian drones, but they prefer to put a blind eye on that. The Finnish authorities ignore that. No, nothing was told to the to Ukraine regarding this. They provide money for him, and they don't reprimand him. He does exactly what they want him to do. The Finnish politicians still continue to support the Kiev regime to the detriment of their own people. You said that you have one more question. Yes, exactly. One more question. Vladimir Zelensky and Prime Minister of Armenia Nikolo Pashinyan held negotiations in English, although both politicians speak Russian. What can you say about that? You know, this is cheap performance, and I mean it. I don't see any point. I don't want to further comment this, because this is the abuse of peoples of Ukraine, where majority speaks Russian. Even more, Zelensky promised to support and nurture this language by all means, and also of the people of Armenia. This was abuse, and people in Armenia understood it quite clearly. I would like to make jokes about it probably, but this is purposeful abuse against their own people. It's no place to make jokes here, because I pity people. Zelensky lied to them, tricked them. People voted for him because he promised to support the language, first and foremost, and peaceful coexistence. That is it. Now, the same thing is happening in Yerevan. Thank you. I congratulate you on the upcoming holiday. Is Almayadin with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I congratulate you on the upcoming holiday. What are the prospects and obstacles for the Russian initiatives to create a zone free of weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East? What does Russia do to promote this? The establishment of the zone free of nuclear weapons and other types of weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East is our priority. The implementation of this initiative would contribute to strengthening security for the interest of all the region without any exceptions, and all countries in the region and beyond. The changes in this regard could have helped to overcome deep distrust and to create effective mechanisms that will help the countries in the region timely and based on the international law to defute any reservations and suspicions. Looking back in the history, at the conference of 1995 to review and extend the NPT, our country, just like other depositories of the treaty, the U.S. and Great Britain, became the co-sponsors of the resolution to form the zone free of nuclear weapons and other types of weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. By now, we've held 6 review conferences, and we reconfirm our support and commitment to the 1995 resolution. We, as observers, continue to contribute to the substantial work of the conference regarding this topic. The goals and aims of it are still relevant. We welcome the gradual dialogue within the conference that Israel and U.S. refuses to join. Clearly, they are not interested. A clear interest in achieving any agreements between the countries in the region and establishing constructive interaction on non-proliferation on WMD. Probably Washington and Western Jerusalem think it easier to incite Middle East countries in the region against each other and hype up the made-up threats. Despite the confrontation in the region, the states that participated in the conference do not close their doors to be involved in the efforts of other countries. They do not give up. We expect that the event that started in New York on April 27th, the 11th review conference of the NPT treaty, will contribute and help establish a zone free of nuclear weapons and other types of weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. Thank you. I congratulate you. Is Ruski Vector with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Ruski Vector, Tatiana Plotnikova. I congratulate you on the upcoming holiday. Donald Trump recently recognized that the U.S. act as pirates. How can we influence these pirates through diplomatic means so they stop attack Russian vessels and vessels of our allies? The Russian side deem it unacceptable to seize peaceful vessels and qualify these actions as a severe violation of the fundamental principles and norms of international law of the sea and the freedom of navigation. This approach of the U.S. authorities create very dangerous illegal incidents with serious consequences. As to these words of Donald Trump, this shows the true goals of Washington, who want to create a competitive advantage in the market of carbons. Ruslan Pankratov, after E. We have one question today. Kaya Kallas in Yerevan said that the decision of the U.S. to withdraw 5,000 military people from Germany came as a surprise to the EU, and she also underlined that the American troops defend not only European but also U.S. interests. Does Russian MFA see these statements as surprising and de facto recognition of the priority of the U.S. interest as a sign that the EU lost its sovereignty and security? I don't know how to even start answering your question. It won't be long, but choose. Here's what happened. The first phrase, the second, everything is turned upside down in the Oblonsky house, as Leo Tolstoy wrote. What does NATO do when you gather for summits? You had a lot of get-togethers. Didn't you tell each other about the huge dislocations of the U.S. troops, where they will be redirected and redeployed? What we're talking about then? What is going on in the NATO headquarters and in Brussels and EU corridors? What is going on there? But we know the answer. There's no solidarity, not just because we like that or we want that. This is just a fact. The EU and NATO have no solidarity. There's a dictatorship led by the USA, or Anglo-Saxon duo, I may say, and they do only what is beneficial for them. And crazy collective group, the rest of the countries, they are guided and controlled. No one was going to share anything with Kai Kallas or anyone in the EU. They need only to voice Russophobe narratives, to do all the dirty work. They want the EU to associate with terrorist Zelensky, so that he can go to different countries, trick them into providing more money. Only for this. That is it. Thank you for your question. I congratulate all of you on the upcoming holiday, the great Victory Day. We will celebrate it on May 9th, and we will celebrate it together with the whole country, with our compatriots abroad, with those people who care about it, with the whole world who knows the truth about those developments and honors memory about those events. We will take this memory down to our future generations. We'll be able to withstand that, to overcome all challenges, all attempts to diverge us from our path of the truth. Will prevail and continue our path. My